As the bombs stop falling and the headlines go quiet, something astonishing is happening inside Iran. We're now learning that the most powerful institution in the Islamic Republic, the IRGC, is falling. It's rotting from the inside out. And by the time you finish this video, you're going to understand why the silence right now is far more dangerous for Tehran than any bomb ever was. And that's because the real threat to the IRGC and to the regime itself isn't coming from Washington or Tel Aviv. It's coming from inside the house. Hey gang, it's me, Dr. Steve, your patron professor, here to help you make sense of the madness with breaking news and analysis you're not going to get anywhere else. So make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. The Islamic Republic is in a crisis, a mortal crisis, a crisis that risks its very existence. Iran's regime is being squeezed on nearly every front at once. Its currency has collapsed roughly 260% against the dollar since October 2023, with the IMF pegging inflation at 69% year over year. China, its last major oil customer, has cut purchases by about 40%. Stripping Tehran of its remaining hard currency lifeline. Infrastructure is failing in parallel, 19 major dams running dry, an obsolete power grid, and mass fuel shortages despite Iran sitting on vast oil reserves. Politically, they supposedly installed a new supreme leader who no one has ever seen since the installment. They have a fractured government with hardliners and clerics publicly clashing over whether to fight or negotiate, unpaid wages, degrading housing, and rampant inflation that spawned the massive uprisings in January continue to plague the land. Meanwhile, the IRGC itself is bleeding from border insurgency, internal executions, unresolved assassinations, and officer defections, leaving a regime facing military, economic, infrastructural, political, and institutional collapse converging simultaneously, with no ally rushing to its rescue. As we speak, the U.S. enforced blockade continues to economically starve Iran of $500 million a day in lost oil revenue. The regime is beginning the slow but inevitable process of complete and total collapse, and we could see it from at least 5 different vantage points. First and foremost, there is, of course, the economic strangulation. In any economy, money is oxygen, and Iran is running out of it. War historian Victor Davis Hanson has noted that Trump's strategy here mirrors Winfield Scott's old Anaconda plan from the Civil War. Squeeze the South's ports, cut off its trade, starve its industry, and let time do the rest. That's exactly what's happening to Iran right now. More than 50,000 American troops remain in theater. The blockade is one of the most successful embargo and debanking operations of the modern era, and Iran is losing an estimated $400 to $500 million a day in economic output. $500 million every single day. And it's not just the West squeezing them. China, as we noted, Iran's last major oil customer, the one country that was still buying discounted Iranian crude to keep its manufacturing engine running cheap. They've cut its Iranian oil purchase by roughly 40%. China was the last vestige of anything resembling an economy for Tehran. Without Beijing's checkbook, Iran genuinely does not have an economy left to speak of. The currency tells the same story in numbers you simply can't spin. In October 2023, $1 US was equivalent to 500,000 Iranian rials on the parallel market. By this summer, that same dollar now costs 1.8 million rials, a 260% collapse in under 3 years. The IMF puts Iran's inflation at 69% year over year. Simply put, Iran's economic spiral is unsustainable. But along with this economic strangulation, there's the infrastructure collapse, frankly, nobody's talking about right now. And this is where it gets even worse for Tehran, because even if the war were to end tomorrow, this next crisis doesn't go away. Iran is facing what can only be described as a triple infrastructure disaster: water, power, and fuel. Water, power, and fuel, all failing simultaneously. 19 major dams across the country are running dry after years of drought and decades of water mismanagement that predate this war entirely. And here's the vicious cycle. Water systems need electricity to run pumps and treatment plants. So when the grid fails, the water fails with it. Iran, think about this. It's a country sitting on some of the largest hydrocarbon reserves on the planet. They can't even reliably keep the lights on in its own cities because decades of underinvestment have left the power infrastructure obsolete. And then there's the fuel shortage. The country is a top global oil producer, and yet the naval blockade and disrupted domestic infrastructure have created actual gasoline vulnerability for trucks, ambulances, farm equipment, factories. A ceasefire could stop the bombs. It can't instantly refill a reservoir, rebuild a power grid, or reverse 30 years of underinvestment. That's the disaster that this regime finds itself in. But it gets even worse. There's a leadership vacuum eating itself alive. Moshtaba Khamenei is nominally the new supreme leader, but no one knows if he's even alive. Insiders are openly describing the state of the regime as a war of thugs scrambling over dwindling survival mechanisms. The hardliners and the parliamentarians are openly clashing with each other. Negotiators are being called traitors, and confrontationists are being accused of being suicidal. Clerics are fighting each other on state television. It's a regime beginning to cannibalize itself in real time for all to see. But something even deeper, more ominous is happening inside the regime. A dark web of betrayal, mystery, and murder. You're not going to believe this. But first, gang, I need to tell you something that I genuinely believe every Patriot family needs to hear right now. There is a window, an open window at this moment in history that's actually never existed before. And it's not going to stay open forever. And the Patriots who are already on the other side of this are not waiting for permission from the system to provide for their families. Because of AI, it has never been easier or faster to create additional income than it is right now. Now, what used to take months and a team and a budget and years of experience now literally takes just hours. The playing field just got leveled, and regular families, not Silicon Valley, not Wall Street, regular families are the ones who can actually win right now, but only if they move. Now, a friend of our show and a co-author of one of my books, Joseph Aaron, saw this window and he made a commitment. Every single member of his family would have their own income stream where AI does the vast majority of the work. His 18-year-old son, his 16-year-old son, his 21-year-old daughter, even his wife. Real businesses, real income, all built with AI. And now Joseph and his kids are opening this up to you. They're hosting a completely free 5-day live experience on Zoom where they're going to sit down with you and help you build your own system too. Our team attended and they were building entire income streams at the press of a button. And these are people who had never touched AI in their lives. It was one of the most remarkable things I've ever witnessed. And if you're worried about the tech, don't be. Look, it's simple. If you can speak English, you can direct AI, okay? That's literally all it takes. And by the way, we did the same event 2 months ago, and you guys absolutely loved it. And so we're going to do another one. So join us for free in this coming week. If you or someone in your family could use additional income or needs to replace income and want to tap into the power of AI to do it for you, this window is open right now, but it's not going to stay open forever. Click the link below and join Joseph and his family at their free upcoming event. They'll help you build an income stream where AI does the work for you. It's amazing. Don't let your family be the ones who found out too late. Click on that link below right now. And this is where the Revolutionary Guard itself comes in, because the IRGC isn't just losing generals and airstrikes. It's bleeding from at least 4 different directions that have nothing to do with Washington or Tel Aviv. So first, there is a genuine sustained insurgency along the Pakistani border led by Jaish al-Adal, a Sunni separatist group that's killed IRGC and Basij personnel in the dozens over the past couple of years. Second, there's been an internal judicial purge that sent at least 11 people to the gallows on espionage charges since the war began, with Amnesty International documenting more than 6,000 arbitrary arrests and at least 39 political executions, many of them tied not to actual spying, but to people who simply took part in or reported on the mass protests. Third, there's been a pattern of ambiguous, unresolved deaths inside the officer corps itself. Now, this actually goes back to 2022 when IRGC Colonel Hassan Syed Kodai was assassinated, and his colonel friend died days later in what Iranian officials called a suicide, but Iran international sources described as a staged execution by the Guard's own internal security branch over suspicion that he had leaked classified information. And then fourth, there's the exodus. Since the beginning of 2026, a growing number of mid-ranking IRGC officers have reportedly been fleeing the country through Turkey and Azerbaijan, choosing defection over the risk of becoming the next name in an internal purge. And then finally, underneath all of it, there's, of course, the Iranian people themselves. The 2025 and 2026 protest movement was one of the largest waves of civil unrest in the Islamic Republic's history, met with a brutal crackdown that some estimates put at tens of thousands of civilian deaths. And it hasn't stopped. Recent reports do describe coordinated protests spanning multiple provinces, retirees marching against hyperinflation and the extreme heat, housing applicants staging sit-ins, hundreds of medical staff walking out over unpaid wages. This is a population that's already proven in blood that it is willing to march into gunfire over a currency that no longer buys literally anything. So here's the picture, and it's bigger than any single headline. You got American bombs that have completely degraded Iran's military capabilities, rendering them inert. You've got China, Iran's last financial lifeline, walking away. You've got a currency that's lost over 70% of its value against the dollar in under 3 years. You've got a water, power, and fuel system crisis collapsing under the weight of decades of mismanagement that no ceasefire can fix. You've got a leaderless, faceless supreme leader whose own inner circle is publicly fighting on state television. You've got the IRGC itself, the very institution that's supposed to hold this regime together, hemorrhaging officers to a broader insurgency, an internal execution machine, unresolved assassinations within its own ranks, and a slow trickle of defectors who no longer trust the organization to protect them. None of these forces individually would topple the Islamic Republic, but all of these pressures converging at the very exact same time, military, economic, infrastructural, political, and institutional collapse hitting simultaneously with no ally willing to bail them out, there ain't no way out of that one. That's not a regime under pressure anymore. That's a regime running out of runway on every single front at once. And when historians write the real story of what finally brought down the Islamic Republic, I don't think it's going to be the missile strikes or the economic strangulation. It's going to be the slow, painful degradation of that regime that rotted from within.